Welcome to the live show. Welcome to the live show, man. It's been what, like a day? It's been a day. Okay, it's been a day. Your boy has been working. See my eyes? I've been working nonstop, ladies and gentlemen. It is currently 3:18, and of course, today's date is the 24th of May, 2025. How are you doing? Welcome to the live show one more time, ladies and gentlemen. We are back for another episode. How are you doing? How are you doing? Yes, y'all. We are back. Welcome back to the live show. You know what time it is. All right. The title for today is American Greatness. Okay. You know what I stand for? I believe America is the greatest nation in the world. Everybody has their own reservations or opinions, but my opinion is America is the greatest nation in the world. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to think so. This is my own opinion. And it is what it is. American greatness. Here is Press Secretary Caroline Levitt, of course, the youngest press secretary ever, 27 years old. 27 years old. She's already changed the way press conferences are being done in the White House. And it's just remarkable what she's been able to accomplish. A couple of days ago, she had kids in there asking questions, and I felt like, well, I don't feel like I know for a fact that would change those kids' perspective about life, and they're gonna dream bigger because at a very young age you're going into the White House to ask the press secretary questions. So that really means a lot. That would really mean a lot for those kids. But with that being said, let's go on ahead and get the show started. All right, here we go.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are we? Good? Good. President Trump is saddened and outraged over the brutal murder of two Israeli embassy staff here in Washington, D.C. last night. Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram were a beautiful young couple. In fact, we learned that Yaron was planning to propose to Sarah next week in Jerusalem. Yaron's father, Daniel, spoke about the young couple's devotion for one another this morning. He said, "They were in love, one for the other. The embassy told us they were like a star couple at the embassy. I never expected something like this. He had his whole life before him." These words, especially every parent knows, are heart-wrenching. The evil of anti-Semitism must be eradicated from our society. I spoke to the Attorney General this morning. The Department of Justice will be prosecuting the perpetrator responsible for this to the fullest extent of the law. Hatred has no place in the United States of America under President Donald Trump. Everyone here at the White House is praying for the victims' friends and families during this unimaginable time. Now for some scheduling announcements. On Saturday morning, President Trump will deliver the commencement address at the United States Military Academy at West Point. On Monday, to commemorate Memorial Day, the president will visit Arlington National Cemetery and participate in a wreath-laying ceremony. The president will further honor our military next month on June 14th when he hosts the 250th anniversary of the United States Army with a grand military parade celebration right here in our nation's capital. President Trump will be joined by veterans, active duty troops, wounded warriors, Gold Star families, and patriotic Americans from across the country to celebrate our heroes who have kept us safe. Tickets for the parade and the celebration are available through the America 250 Commission's event registration portal. It will be a truly historic and special day for our country. After the parade, President Trump will travel to the G7 Leaders Summit in Canada from June 15th through the 17th. We will be sending an additional logistics information out after the briefing. Last night, Republicans in the House passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the most significant piece of legislation in years. There were a lot of good faith negotiations in the Republican conference leading up to the final passage, but as always, President Trump came in at the end to bring all sides together and get this deal done. This one big beautiful bill will implement President Trump's Make America Great Again agenda by delivering the largest tax cut in American history for middle-class families, the working class, and small businesses. The one big beautiful bill fulfills President Trump's promises of no tax on tips, which was applauded today by the CEO of Uber, no tax on overtime, a Made in America auto tax break, Trump savings accounts for newborn babies, and substantial tax cuts for our amazing seniors' Social Security benefits. The one big beautiful bill will permanently secure the border by delivering the largest border security investment in history, funding at least 1 million annual removals of illegal aliens to carry out the largest deportation campaign ever, finishing the Trump border wall, and giving pay raises and bonuses for our incredible ICE and Border Patrol agents. The one big beautiful bill protects the Medicaid program and its benefits for the most vulnerable Americans that the program was designed for by kicking off 1.4 million illegal aliens from receiving benefits and implementing common sense work requirements for able-bodied Americans. The one big beautiful bill also helps get our fiscal house in order by carrying out the largest deficit reduction in nearly 30 years with $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings. Every single Democrat in the House of Representatives who voted against all of these common sense and massively popular policies. The Democrat Party has never been more radical and out of touch with the needs of the American people. The one big beautiful bill is the final missing piece toward ushering the golden age of America. The Senate should pass this as quickly as possible and send it to President Trump's desk for a final signature. After today's briefing, President Trump will hold a Make America Healthy Again event alongside Secretary Kennedy and several other cabinet secretaries to unveil the Madhouse Commission report. President Trump wants every child in America to grow up and to live a long and healthy life. That's why he's working alongside Secretary Kennedy to end the chronic disease epidemic to keep our children healthy, safe, and disease-free. The Madhouse Commission report is a historic assessment, the first of its kind by any presidential administration, of current evidence and research about the health crisis affecting America's children. This report is a review of pre-existing research to comprehensively assess what we understand about our health problems and what we don't understand, and how we can find those answers. All of the findings will be based on the gold standard of science. And I think I speak for all Madhouse moms across the country when I say we look forward to the president's event and remarks later this afternoon. And as we head into the Memorial Day weekend, a quick update on gas prices. According to the fuel savings platform Gas Buddy, the national average price of gasoline is expected to be $3.08 on Memorial Day. We expect that to continue to decline because of the president's energy policies. But this is down from Memorial Day last year. And adjusted for inflation, it's the second cheapest price for a gallon of gas on Memorial Day since 2003, thanks to President Trump. And finally, in other news, the Department of Homeland Security conducted a deportation flight from Texas to remove vicious illegal criminals in the United States. All of these individuals were sent, or are trying to be sent, to a third country. And President Trump promised to get vicious illegal alien murderers, rapists, and pedophiles like these out of our country, and he is trying to deliver on this promise. But no matter how upset this makes Democrats, we will continue to deport these monsters to keep Americans safe. And here are the heinous individuals who were on that flight. A Cuban national, convicted of homicide, armed robbery, false impersonation of an official, kidnapping, and robbery strong-arm. A Cuban national convicted of attempted first-degree murder with a weapon. A citizen of Laos convicted of first-degree murder and robbery. A Mexican national convicted of second-degree murder. A citizen of South Sudan convicted of robbery in the possession of a firearm. A citizen of Burma convicted of lascivious acts with a child less than 12 years old. A citizen of Burma convicted of first-degree sexual assault involving a victim mentally and physically incapable of resisting. It's disgusting. And a Vietnamese national convicted of first-degree murder. Now, a liberal activist district court judge in the city of Boston, Massachusetts, is trying to force the President of the United States to bring these monsters back to our country. Judge Brian Murphy is ordering the Department of Homeland Security to give these illegal criminals 15 days to reopen their immigration cases with access to phones and attorneys. Every single one of these individuals, I will add, had final orders of removal from our country. And now Judge Murphy is forcing federal officials to remain in Djibouti for over 2 weeks, threatening our U.S. diplomatic relationships with countries around the world, and putting these agents' lives in danger by having to be with these illegal murderers, criminals, and rapists. This is completely absurd. Judge Brian Murphy is not the Secretary of State. He is not the Secretary of Defense or the Commander-in-Chief. He is a district court judge in Massachusetts. He cannot control the foreign policy or the national security of the United States of America, and to suggest otherwise is being completely absurd. According to new reporting about this judge, he's a registered Democrat in Massachusetts who during his Senate confirmation hearings failed to disclose his ties to a radical left-wing organization that claimed the word illegal to describe illegal aliens was inherently prejudicial. This massive judicial overreach by Judge Murphy is part of the same opposition our administration has faced since day one. Radical left-wing judges are egregiously trying to stop President Trump from using his core constitutional powers as head of the executive branch and commander-in-chief. These judicial activists want to unilaterally stop President Trump from deporting foreign terrorists and keeping the American people safe. Nearly 80 million Americans re-elected this president to deport illegal criminals from our homeland, and polling consistently shows that 90% of Americans want illegal alien criminals, especially those with final orders of removal from our country, who have chosen to continue to stay here illegally. Americans want these people sent home. We hope the Supreme Court will continue to rein this in as soon as possible to restore proper constitutional order in our country. We'll take some questions. And here in our new media seat today, we have Jillian Michaels. She's a renowned personal health expert. I know all of you know her. I certainly do, watching fitness videos growing up. And a media powerhouse who continues to expand her reach with her podcast, Keeping It Real. Jillian, I know you're here today for the Make America Healthy Again event. We're proud to welcome you to the White House. Thanks for being in the briefing. Why don't you go ahead?
Thank you for having me. As a Maha mom yourself, how do you interpret the significance of this report in terms of delivering measurable health improvements for Americans and their kids, and what specific actions does the administration plan to take in response to it?
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. And again, thank you very much for being here. I would like to emphasize, we held a call earlier today with Secretary Kennedy, Secretary Rollins, Administrator Zeldin, and other officials at Health and Human Services to talk about the gravity of this report. When the president took office, he promised to make this country healthy again. And the president signed an executive order directing this commission. And now, less than 100 days later, the commission is delivering this report. It's another promise made and another promise kept. And the report identifies 4 major factors that are contributing to the rise in childhood chronic disease. Again, this is the first time the federal government has really recognized in a single report that we have a problem in our country. Our children are getting sicker, not healthier. This is not just a crisis, a health crisis, but it poses national security implications as well. And this administration is focused on ensuring we understand why. The 4 factors contributing to the report, as you will all hear from the president later, are number 1, poor diet, a robust discussion about ultra-processed food that are dominating our children's diets, environmental chemical exposure, plastics and other chemicals that are unfortunately a part of our daily American life. It talks about the lack of physical activity and chronic stress, and how technology-driven lifestyles are contributing to the decline of our children's physical and mental health. And then lastly, the report touches on the over-medicalization that's taking place in our American society, nowhere else in the world, but just right here in the United States of America. And the report directs the entire administration to understand why these issues are happening and what public policy can the administration implement to ensure that we are fostering a more healthy country for our children. So I'll leave it at that and let the president and his team speak more about this historic report later. But this should be good news for everyone. I don't care what your politics are. We should all agree that we want our children to be healthy and safe, and we want our food supply to be healthy and safe. We have the best farmers and ranchers in the world right here in the United States of America. And we have the best workers in the world. We have the best people in the world. But unfortunately, we have a health crisis that's been plaguing us for too long. And this report speaks to the heart of it. You're welcome. Thanks for being here. Garrett, go ahead.
Caroline, you guys are very proud of your record on transparency. I have 2 transparency-related questions for you.
Sure.
On the president's dinner tonight, will the White House commit to making a list of the attendees public so people can see who's paying for that kind of access to the president?
Well, as you know, Garrett, this question has been raised with the president. I have also addressed the dinner tonight. The president is attending it in his personal time. It is not a White House dinner. It's not taking place here at the White House. But certainly I can raise that question and try to get you an answer for it. Okay,
and on the Qatari aircraft, the Air Force has said they're going to classify all the information about the work that has to get done to bring it up to snuff to be Air Force One. Previous Air Force One contracts, including the one that the president entered into in 2018, are public. That's available knowledge. Will the White House commit to releasing who's doing that work and the cost of that work? I understand that some elements might be classified about specific systems, but will you commit to releasing that basic information so people can see ultimately what this costs?
Well, Garrett, as you know, that's a question for the Department of Defense and the United States Air Force, who is accepting this jet as part of their fleet.
Declassify anything he wants.
Well, you'll have to ask the Department of Defense and the United States Air Force, who is accepting this jet as part of its fleet. Peter.
The president can declassify anything that he wants. Has he looked to see if there are any records here that would contradict what we've been told about Joe Biden's decline?
He has not directed anyone, to my knowledge, to look into that, but surely I can ask him if he intends to. I think the president has spoken on this pretty extensively, and I have spoken about it extensively from this podium as well, how it was truly one of the worst political scandals this country has ever seen, that the previous administration covered up the decline in the former president's mental and physical ability, and it's now all coming out. But the American people knew the truth, and that's one of the many reasons why President Trump won the election on November 5th.
And President Trump says that he basically thinks unelected Biden staffers concealed his decline so that they could use the levers of power for their own personal gain.
Well, look, that's not just the president thinking that, Peter. There's a new book out. I don't know if any of you have heard about it. Again, a little bit too late, because the American people knew the truth on this from the very beginning. And there were reporters in this room, including some from your network, Peter, I'll give you a little bit of credit here, who have said that clearly Joe Biden's staffers were engaging in this cover-up. So this is common sense. This isn't the president making it up. These are facts that are now finally being revealed.
Right, and I'm not saying the president's making it up, but he specifically talks about the auto pen. He thinks that staffers were using this auto pen. Mm-hmm. Is there some kind of like a badge that you have to swipe to use an auto pen? Is there a record of that?
I can tell you here at this White House, the president signs any document that has legal implications. The president signs every executive order. He signs every proclamation. He signs pretty much every document that is needed for the president's signature, with the exception of maybe some letters to children. From what we have heard and seen, that was not the case in the previous administration, and the president is raising good questions that are worth looking into. And as for Maha, I'm going to take a sip of water, if that's okay with you guys. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. Back to the presidential gala tonight. Did anyone in the White House or in the White House counsel's office advise the president against holding this sweepstakes, whereby people who spent the most money on his Trump coin would then have access to the president at this dinner?
Again, the president has been asked about this. He has addressed this. I have also stated previously from this podium that the president is abiding by all conflict of interest laws that are applicable to the president. And I think everybody, the American public, believe it's absurd for anyone to insinuate that this president is profiting off of the presidency. This president was incredibly successful before giving it all up to serve our country publicly. And not only has he lost wealth, but he also almost lost his life. He has sacrificed a lot to be here, and to suggest otherwise is frankly completely absurd.
Does the White House have any concerns?
round of nuclear talks between Iran and the U.S. is going to take place on Friday in Rome. What is the president anticipating ahead of that? And if a deal doesn't come from that meeting, is he going to walk away?
Well, I'm glad you brought up Iran because I do have an update. The president spoke to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. They had a productive discussion. They discussed many things, including, of course, the tragic shooting that took place here in Washington, D.C. last night. But they also did talk about a potential deal with Iran, which the president believes is moving along in the right direction. And as the president told me, and he's told all of you, this deal with Iran could end in two ways. It could end in a very positive diplomatic solution, or it could end in a very negative situation for Iran. So that's why these talks are taking place later this week. Yamish, good to see you.
Hi, good. Thanks for taking the question.
Sure.
The president showed a video that he said showed more than 1,000 burial sites of white South Africans that he said were murdered. We know that that was not true and that the video wasn't showing that. So I wonder, why did the president choose to show that?
What's not true, Yamish?
It's not true that the video was showing a burial site. It is unsubstantiated that that's the case.
No, it is true that that video showed the crosses that represent.
Which is what the president claimed.
The video showed images of crosses in South Africa about white farmers who have been killed and politically persecuted because of the color of their skin. And those crosses are representing their lives. Those crosses are representing their lives in the fact that they are now dead and their government did nothing about it. Are you disputing that there's no...
I'm disputing the fact that the video showed what the president claimed it showed, because it did not show that. But even more, what I'm asking you is who at the White House...
No, it did show that. It showed white crosses representing people who have perished because of racial persecution.
Verifies the videos that the president shows, and what protocols are in place when there's unsubstantiated information being put out for the world and world leaders to show?
Yamish, what's unsubstantiated about the video? The video shows crosses that represent the dead bodies of people who were racially persecuted by their government. In fact, the Associated Press, of all places, has a picture of that very monument, and the caption from the Associated Press is, "Each cross marks a white farmer who has been killed in a farm murder." So it is substantiated, not just by that video and the physical evidence that everybody saw on display in the Oval Office, but also by another outlet in this room, the Associated Press. So you should take it up with them if you believe the claim is unsubstantiated, and that's a ridiculous line of questioning. John, go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Carolyn. The big, beautiful bill now goes to the Senate.
Does, yes.
She's not playing around.
Republican senators have promised amendments that will water this thing down dramatically. What is the president's level of tolerance for their amendments to water it down, and what will be the action taken for some of the amendments that the president does not want?
Sure. Well, the One Big Beautiful Bill is named the One Big Beautiful Bill for a reason, because it is a one big beautiful bill that encompasses just about everything this president could want for the American public. It delivers on so many of his core campaign promises. So surely we want to see those campaign promises signed into law. And as the president put in his Truth Social post this morning, and as he said to me, we can celebrate this past the House for a couple of hours, but now it's time for the Senate to get to work. The president has great relationship with Senate Majority Leader Thune, and of course so many friends on the Senate side of the Hill, and he's expecting them to get busy on this bill and send it to his desk as soon as possible. Phil.
Thank you. Given that the president said the other day the SALT cap, we don't want to benefit Democratic governors, if the Senate was to reduce that SALT cap or make any type of changes, would he support that, or is this a situation where done is beautiful and he just wants to pass it?
Well, look, it's a hypothetical question, obviously. Negotiations. Well, correct. And the bill passed, didn't it? So now it's off to the Senate where additional negotiations will take place, and we'll see how it goes. Michael.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions on the beautiful bill. One of the campaign promises from President Trump was no tax on Social Security. Now, due to congressional rules, that wasn't able to be included in this bill. How does the president plan to follow through on that campaign promise?
Well, this bill did address taxes for our seniors. It actually allows them to take off significant money from their Social Security payments, get more money back, I should say, put more money in their pockets for various reasons. So this bill delivers on that promise. That's the view of the White House.
Secondly, you had two Republicans last night that voted against this bill, Congressman Massey and Davidson. Does the president think that they should be primaried?
I believe he does, and I don't think he likes to see grandstanders in Congress. What's the alternative? I would ask those members of Congress. Did they want to see a tax hike? Did they want to see our country go bankrupt? That's the alternative by them trying to vote no. And the president believes the Republican Party needs to be unified, and the vast majority of Republicans clearly are and are listening to the president. They are trusting in President Trump, as they should, because there's a reason he's sitting in this Oval Office. It's because he's the unequivocal leader of the Republican Party. Not just a president for Republicans, but all Americans. The president's approval rating is at an all-time high right now, and it's because he knows how to deliver. And Republicans like Thomas Massey and others should take note. Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. Building on the question about Social Security, the bill includes the president's promises to address taxes on tips and overtime. Could you say his feelings about the income cap? Is he satisfied where that landed? And also on a different matter, could you comment on the investigation that the Justice Department has into Andrew Cuomo?
As for the first question, the president is clearly satisfied where the bill landed because it passed. Again, now it has to go to the Senate, so changes could certainly be made. As for your second question, I would defer you to the Department of Justice. Christian.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Can you explain the decision to totally shake up FEMA leadership just a week before hurricane season?
You'd have to ask the Department of Homeland Security in terms of leadership, but certainly the administration, and I know the National Security Council here at the White House is monitoring storms and natural disasters that are happening across the country at all times. We're briefed on those. The administration is briefed on those, and Secretary Noem is leading that effort for sure. Go ahead.
Gears, Caroline.
Just following up on Warren Davidson, I wanted to read you his quote that he posted online. While I love many things in the bill, promising someone else will cut spending in the future does not cut spending. Deficits do matter, and this bill grows them. Why should that get a Republican primary?
This bill saves $1.6 trillion for the American taxpayer. It saves more than any bill that has ever passed Capitol Hill has. In fact, by double. The next bill saved $800 billion. This bill saves $1.6 trillion. So this is a very good bill for the American people, the American taxpayer. And I believe, as an outlet put it with a headline this morning, it might have been Politico actually, they wrote that the American people are going to be flush with cash when this thing is signed into law. And that's a good thing for American taxpayers. Sure, go ahead.
Caroline, what is the president doing to win Senate passage by July 4th? And does that include work to eliminate carried interest and make business tax cuts permanent? Where is he on those issues?
Well, look, this bill literally just passed the House of Representatives. So now our team is suiting up for discussions with the Senate side of Capitol Hill. The president again said this morning he hopes to see this bill at his desk as soon as possible, and he'll be engaged in the process to get it through the Senate, just like he was to get it through the House of Representatives.
What kind of assurances did he give the Freedom Caucus members to kind of ensure that this would get through last night? Was changes to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac part of that equation, changes administratively to Medicaid as well?
Well, I was in that meeting yesterday with the president and House Freedom Caucus, and he told them how he wants to be a cheerleader for them, a cheerleader for the Republican Party, and for the country. And Republicans faced a pivotal moment yesterday. They could have voted to bankrupt the country and increase taxes by $4 trillion, or they could vote for this one big, beautiful bill which cuts taxes and saves American taxpayers money. And he put that proposition before them, and clearly they heeded the call because the bill passed last night. Sure.
Caroline, so on the
or this morning rather. Every day is going into the next. Go ahead.
The Netanyahu call. Just curious, did the president raise the flow of aid into Gaza? Is he happy with where that situation is right now?
Not to my knowledge, but I can certainly go back and check.
And then, did you have any reaction to the Supreme Court's ruling about the religious charter school today, as well as Justice Coney Barrett's decision to recuse herself?
We'll get you an answer on that case specifically. Sure.
You mentioned the president has a good relationship with Leader Thune. Has he talked to him specifically about the plan to get this through the Senate? Does he plan, or is he going to reach out to Republicans who have voiced concerns?
Not to my knowledge has he spoken to Leader Thune this morning. He very well could have. I just wasn't briefed on that call. We can go back and check for you. The president did speak to Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning. He also had a call with President Sheinbaum this morning. He was receiving his intelligence briefing. He's been very busy all morning. But again, he certainly intends to remain active and engaged in these negotiations with the United States Senate to get this bill done.
And just following up on the dinner tonight, you mentioned this is not a White House dinner, but the president is always the president, and the Trump family is making money off of this. So can you just explain, how is this not the president using the office to enrich himself?
All of the president's assets are in a blind trust, which is managed by his children, and I would argue one of the many reasons that the American people reelected this president back to this office is because he was a very successful businessman before giving it up to publicly serve our country. Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. Last week, the president told Brett Baer that he trusts his people, but thinks that the official narrative on his assassination attempts are, quote, a little bit odd. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino said days later that there's no conspiracy to find, and as he put it, quote, the there that you're looking for is not there. My question is the president personally satisfied with the investigations into the attempts on his life? And does he agree with Deputy FBI Director, or does he think there's more to it?
Well, in the lead up to your question, you answered your own question with the president's own words, and I'll leave it at that.
Caroline?
Sure, go ahead, Haley.
Thank you, Caroline.
Haley, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I wanted to follow up on his call with Prime Minister Netanyahu in his effort to reach a deal with Iran. Does he feel like he has the Prime Minister's support in this effort at this point, or did the Prime Minister raise concerns to him in this conversation?
I won't get further into the private discussion between the president and the prime minister, but surely they have a good relationship, one that's built on transparency and trust. And the president has made it very clear to not just Prime Minister Netanyahu, but also the world, that he wants to see a deal with Iran struck, if one can be struck. He does not want to have to take the latter option, the more severe and negative option. He wants to see a deal. The president is a deal maker, and he believes strongly in diplomacy, and he's made that clear to the prime minister, but also to all of you and, frankly, the rest of the world. Mary.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
Two questions, one on the terror attack last night and then another on the big, beautiful bill. Do you or President Trump have a message to politicians like Ilhan Omar, who only this morning explicitly avoided condemning this act of terror?
It's despicable. And frankly, we have seen a rise in anti-Semitic protests, of pro-Hamas protests, of terrorist sympathizers. We saw them on our college campuses, and we've seen the Democrat Party turn a blind eye and in some cases actually embrace such anti-Semitic illegal behavior. And that's why this administration has done more than any administration in history to crack down on anti-Semitism. As you know, in January, when the president took office, he signed a new executive order to combat anti-Semitism. He created a commission focused on doing just that. The Justice Department announced their task force as well. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has revoked thousands of student visas from campuses where these pro-Hamas terrorist campus agitators and violent protests took place. And we've also withheld funding from those very campuses as well in an effort to combat anti-Semitism. So the president's made it very clear that such hatred will have no place in our country.
Thank you. And then on the big, beautiful bill, I know there's a provision that the House included that defunds Planned Parenthood, not only because of the fact that it's the nation's largest abortion provider, but also because it's, I think, the biggest distributor of transgender hormones right now, even to minors, according to Live Action. So is the president committed to making sure that provision stays in the Senate?
The president has maintained a very clear commitment to ensuring that this administration and the American people's tax dollars are not funding any institution. That includes hospital systems that are funding the chemical castration and mutilation of children. We're not going to tolerate taxpayer dollars going to such efforts. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. You mentioned at the top of the briefing that the migrants were to be sent to a third country. I was just wondering, could you share any more on, which countries the administration has struck these agreements with, and what that agreement with South Sudan specifically looks like?
Well, first of all, I won't litigate foreign policy from the podium, but what I will reiterate is the absurdity of this ruling from a district court judge in Boston who is just creating new immigration laws out of thin air. This administration, let me be very clear, because there have been a lot of fake headlines about this deportation flight over the last 2 days. This administration has complied with all court orders. And the individuals whose names I just revealed and whose criminal histories I just spoke of that are on this flight, every single one of them had a final order of removal from our country. In fact, one of these violent illegal criminals had a final order of removal given to him in 1999. It's 2 years after I was born. This individual, this criminal, has been living in our country for an entire generation. And now we have a district court judge who is trying to tell the president and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Homeland Security that an illegal criminal murderer who's been hiding in the shadows in our country for nearly 30 years cannot be deported from United States soil. That not only is undermining our entire immigration system, but it is also undermining our diplomatic negotiations with countries around the world. How are countries on this earth supposed to trust the United States government in these good faith diplomatic negotiations when these countries accept these repatriation flights? How are they supposed to trust us if we have radical district court judges who are going to say, no, you can't do that? And now these illegal criminal murderers and rapists have to sit in Djibouti with our ICE agents who now have to sit there for more than 2 weeks without the proper resources. This judge is not only undermining our immigration system, undermining our foreign policy and our national security, but this judge is undermining the safety of the ICE agents who are putting their lives on the line to remove this list of illegal criminal terrorists. It's truly despicable what's happening in our court system, and the president and this administration hope that the Supreme Court will do what it needs to do to rein in these liberal activist judges. And the Supreme Court has already said it is well within the president's purview to dictate foreign policy, and a radical district court judge should not be getting in the way of that. We'll see you all later at the Maha event. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. Yes. All right. This is going to be a short life. Okay. This is going to be a short life. All right. Not a short life. A short stream. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. All right. So I made a video today concerning this right here. The judge in Wisconsin, or Milwaukee rather, she allegedly helped in, distracting the ICE agent. But liberals are saying, no, she didn't do it. Here we go.
Let's go ahead now and bring in Tom Dupree, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General. Tom, judges, as you well know, in this country are the ultimate arbiters of the law, probably more so even than the lawmakers who write and pass the laws. So how much leeway do judges have to personally circumvent the law when they disagree with it?
Well, they have no leeway to break the law. Judges are held to the same standard that any other American is. I think what's particularly disturbing about this case is, to your point, judges take a sacred, solemn oath to uphold the law. And what this new video shows is apparently the judge engaging in a scheme to frustrate the execution of the law, to obstruct ICE agents from executing this warrant. So she may be a judge, but based on what we've seen on the video, she was acting in a very unjudicial capacity in that she was trying to thwart execution of, rather than uphold the law of the United States.
What about the counter argument that, I guess, this is all new, right? These policies, sending ICE agents to the courthouses, everybody's sort of getting used to it, and no real protocols have been established yet for how anyone is supposed to handle any of that stuff. Does that carry any water?
I don't think it will carry a lot of water here. Judges may personally disagree with presidential policies. They may not like the way that the law is being carried out. They may not like these new policies, but that doesn't give them an excuse to try to thwart and obstruct federal agents from doing their jobs. Judges certainly can write opinions and express views of the law that are at odds with what the president says, but they can't take the law into their own hands. And just as a judge couldn't claim that they're judicially immune if they went out and robbed a bank, judges can't say that they're judicially immune if they do something that's outside of the role of being a judge, such as trying to help someone escape the clutches of federal agents who are just trying to enforce the law.
So here's from the judge's filing. She wants the case to be thrown out, dismissed, May 14th. This is what her lawyers write. The government's prosecution of Judge Duggan is virtually unprecedented, entirely unconstitutional. It violates the 10th Amendment and fundamental principles of federalism and comity reflected in that amendment and in the very structure of the U.S. Constitution.
Well, I think those arguments would be a lot stronger if what the judge was being prosecuted for was actually applying the law, deciding a case, writing an opinion, functioning as a judge. But here, she clearly wasn't. She went out into the hallway, but based on what we see in the video, it appears that she tried to send the federal agents down the hallway so that then she could help this individual escape the courthouse, resulting in that extraordinary scene we saw of the ICE agents pursuing this fugitive down the streets of Milwaukee. That's not what a judge is supposed to do. That doesn't fall within the sphere of faithful execution and implementation of the laws. This was a judge who apparently stepped outside her judicial role to basically frustrate and obstruct policies with which she disagreed.
All right, Tom, thanks for joining us before this Memorial Day weekend. Great to talk to you.
Thanks.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.
The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, joins me now. Director, thank you for being with us here today. It's great to see you as always.
Thanks, Will. Likewise.
I do wonder exactly what's been done here, or what was done under the Biden administration. Was it they were saying that everyone who opposed, say, mask mandates or the vaccination of children are domestic violent extremists? Or were they saying that those are opinions often held by domestic violent extremists?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. That when you look at the language of these documents that I've declassified, first, the strategic implementation plan of the Biden administration's designation of potential violent domestic extremists, it really talks about people who may likely turn out to be domestic violent extremists, or those who may likely turn to violence because of these specific quote-unquote ideologies that they hold. And there's a consistent thread through here that these ideologies that they are designating as turning into potentially violent activities or being manifested in violent activities happen to be those of people who were using their First Amendment rights to oppose certain policies of the Biden administration. And while some of the examples that are focused on there have to do with those who opposed the COVID vaccine mandates, those who opposed the mask mandates, parents who were concerned that—
Oh, yeah, we definitely gonna be shadow banned. Talking about what they're talking about. Yeah, we definitely, yeah, they're going to shadow ban us ×2 talking about this.
their children going to school may be forcibly vaccinated with the COVID vaccine without the consent or awareness of parents. The list goes on, but it's not exclusive to this. In some of these reports that we've declassified, it shows that people who were opposed to Biden's border policy, for example, could therefore have propensities to join a militia or could become these domestic violent extremists that we're talking about here. And again, it's important to look at this in the totality and the sequence of how this happened. These documents were issued in December of 2021. You remember very well, Will, the speech, the ominous speech that President Biden gave in 2022, where with this red background and Marines standing in the background, he issued an address to the nation warning the American people that Donald J. Trump and MAGA Republicans pose a direct threat to the fabric of our republic. And then you put that together with how the FBI and others within the Biden administration directed social media companies to censor Americans and undermine our First Amendment rights because, of course, the social media companies don't want to be in a position to support the spread of domestic violent extremism. So when you look at all of these things together, you understand at its core the thing that I committed to the American people to root out, which is the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community and national security state against the American people.
Director, it's a little bit like that analogy or the test that I had to take when I took the law school entrance exam. And it's one of whether or not you can pass basic logic. It is all baseball players wear hats, but do all people that wear hats play baseball? What it seems like was done here is you take domestic violent extremists in this document, they suggest often hold these opinions, but then they created degrees as what you just laid out, that if you hold those opinions, therefore you might be on the path to domestic violent extremism. So if somebody's watching at home and you went onto social media and you said, I don't believe in mask mandates, it's not necessarily that the Biden administration said, therefore you are an extremist, but it placed you, it appears, and correct me if I'm wrong, on some sort of continuum where you would be perhaps monitored on social media and characterized publicly, like you just described, from the President of the United States.
That's exactly the point, and this is where some former FBI agents have actually come out who were serving in the FBI during this period of time, and it pointed out exactly that fact, that this line of continuum that they have created here that places a level of suspicion on people. Ultimately, again, the through line here are people who oppose President Biden administration's policies should be seen with some form of suspicion as a potential domestic terror threat. You've talked a lot about, you spoke with Senator Rand Paul about the Quiet Skies program, the secret domestic terror watch list program, something that the Biden administration placed me on the very day after I spoke out against Vice President Kamala Harris's policies and warned about the potential of the threat that she would pose if she were elected and served as commander-in-chief. So there are many different examples here that go towards exactly what you're talking about, that by laying this groundwork, they are then giving excuse and license to the FBI and other federal agencies to then surveil or carefully watch Americans who oppose the Biden administration's policies.
Let's continue on that path together. You did mention that interview with Senator Rand Paul. I wanted to play that for the audience where we talk about why you were placed on the Quiet Skies list. And he said something in that conversation, Director, that was fascinating. He said, there are others. And he also suggested there might be others who were visited at home. Watch this.
I do believe Tulsi Gabbard was selected for constitutionally protected speech and for her positions. And I want to see the deliberation. I have not yet seen the deliberation of who made the decision, who argued, and why the heck a former congresswoman who is now at the highest echelon of our government was put on a terrorist watch list. It's inexcusable, and I don't want to let it happen to an ordinary citizen, much less somebody who's in our government.
And as I mentioned, Director, he did go on to say he thinks there's a long list of others, including yourself, that were placed on these lists, perhaps other members of Congress.
Yes, I have heard from other members of Congress who themselves have said that while serving in Congress, they were placed on this list, and even after notifying TSA, remained on this list for a period of time. I think it's important to note that the TSA, the Federal Air Marshal Director that's been charged with administering this Quiet Skies program is continuing to justify the fact that I was put on this domestic terror watch list. But they have no answer for the fact that there were other high-level Americans who went and participated in the meetings that I did in Rome at the Vatican, at which time I was placed on this list. I called them immediately and I said, hey, I'm going through all of this additional screening, surveillance. This is really weird. Did you have to go through that? And every one of them said, no, we were not. And the key difference there is the night before traveling, they were not on Fox News criticizing then Vice President Kamala Harris. So they're searching and trying to find some kind of justification for ultimately what this Quiet Skies program has become, one of many, unfortunately, in the federal government, a program that can and has been very easily used to be weaponized against those that the then Biden administration deemed to be a threat.
Well, I've been on Fox News criticizing power for some years. I'll have to find out. Hopefully you can help as you declassify documents, whether or not I'm on some.
This is being deeply investigated as we speak.
I'm glad to hear that. Director, you're used to long-form conversations, and we appreciate having one with you here today. I hope you forgive me for a moment, as I want to set up this question for you. We're talking about people that the prior administration defined as living outside the law. When we watch now in current events, those who are supposed to guard the law step outside the law. I want to talk about Judge Hannah Dugan in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There's a new video out of Wisconsin and the Milwaukee County Courthouse that shows the lengths to which she went to protect Eduardo Flores Ruiz, an illegal immigrant. In the prior footage, you saw her approach two ICE agents who were standing in the hallway and asked them to visit the chief judge's office. While they stepped out of the hallway, Flores steps into the hallway with his lawyer to make his escape. What Dugan and Flores don't realize is that there's a third ICE agent watching them as they walk down the hallway. He is surveilling them and picks up a tail the minute Flores walks past him in the hallway. Now remember, Dugan has already distracted two ICE agents, but she missed the third. Flores and his lawyer walk down to the basement and out the door, still tailed by an ICE agent. When he gets to the door, almost to street level, you're going to see exactly what happens. Remember, he's still being tailed by one ICE agent. But when he hits the street, that's when he moves into a full-out sprint. He's made his escape with the help of Judge Hannah Dugan. You can see quickly there, he is sprinting across the street. Other footage will show you then from a different angle, he makes a sprint all the way down the street for a few hundred meters, chased by an ICE agent until he is tackled and taken into custody. But this entire thing begins, Director, with the participation, the distraction of Judge Hannah Dugan, who's now facing charges of obstruction of.
Now think about this. When I made the video yesterday afternoon, because it's currently 4:07 a.m. here in Atlanta, Georgia. But when I made the video yesterday, I said, what if pedestrians or just people going about their daily life got caught up in some sort of shit show? What if this guy decided to do something crazy? What if? And then a liberal, of course, said in the comment section, she's not. She wasn't helping or distracting the ICE agent. What are you talking about? So why didn't she make sure it was settled in the courthouse? Why was he let outside? And then he started running, sprinting like Usain Bolt. This man was sprinting like Usain Bolt. So what if he had a weapon or something? Just regular Americans going about their daily lives would have been affected by something they knew nothing about. So she allegedly helped this person escape her ICE agent. Some people will say no, but that's the facts. Okay? Allegedly, okay? Allegedly.
Justice. So, Director, I just want to get your reaction to that new video out of Milwaukee.
Yeah, Will, you know, it demonstrates something that we know already has been a common theme, especially under the previous administration, is that you have people in positions of authority and power who in their arrogance really believe that they can break the law, they can undermine the rule of law. And essentially in this case, I mean, yes, we talked about activist judges. She is clearly doing something to help someone who has already broken the law by entering our country illegally evade law enforcement who had him in their custody. And they've been able to get away with this for two reasons. Number one, there has been no transparency, and because there's been no transparency, there has been no accountability. And this is what we are seeking to bring about. This is what the responsibility and mission that I take very seriously is to shine a light, as has been done in this video, as has been done in the documents that we are declassifying, shine a light on areas and places that have not seen the light of day for a very long time and have allowed many bad actors within our own government to get away with either crimes or unconstitutional acts and undermining our God-given rights and freedoms that exist within the Constitution and that serve as the foundation of our republic. And the last thing I'll say on this, Will, is as we continue down this process, don't be surprised that we will see the very same playbook that has been used for a very long time in this country, where those very bad actors and their friends in the legacy and mainstream propaganda media will accuse us of the very things that they are guilty of in order to try to deflect away from how they and their actions are undermining the Constitution, the rights and freedoms and civil liberties of the American people.
I mentioned that Director Gabbard is used to long-form conversation. She's going to have another one with us here today because she's not going anywhere. Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. All right. I just want to say this up front before it comes into full effect. I have been offered a partnership. Yeah, we're going to call it a partnership, okay? With Augusta gold IRA. Okay. So I will be coming out with that probably next week, and I'll tell you guys about it. But it is for people who are looking into or who are interested in gold and precious metals. Yes, it is going to be fun. If you are interested in precious metals, gold, silver, and stuff like that, you don't have to, but if you are interested in it, I would say try it out. Okay. But if you're not, it's fine. But we're going to be rolling this out next week, and I'm excited for it. This is like very exciting for me. Yeah, this is going to happen next week. I got the call last week, but I had to, of course, know what I was getting myself into. But if you are interested in precious metals backed IRA, then that would be fun. And yeah, we're going to talk about it next week. But for now, we're going to pause on that and look into other stuff going on in the United States.
Yeah, the Democrats sure wish we'd stop talking about all the devastating Joe Biden cover-up headlines. Well, too bad. One of the Obama bros is now admitting that he soft-pedaled concerns about our geriatric former president, and here's why.
I remember feeling, I want to talk about this as a huge liability. I want to talk about this as something Joe Biden can overcome. But I'm not going to go so far as to say, I think Joe Biden must drop out. He is too old to be president. A, because I didn't know exactly what was going on behind the scenes. But B, if Joe Biden is the candidate, I want him to win because I care about the country.
Well, you saw the liberal Daily Show host, Jon Stewart. He's warning his fellow Democrats that anyone with the stench of Joe Biden on them is going to have a tough time scrubbing it off.
It has sown the seeds for a real, and it's an opportunity for an interesting reinvention of what this Democratic Party can be. It's going to come from someone outside of it. I think anybody that has any of that stink on them is not going to be particularly successful. If that is not a Democrat's slogan in 2028, something has gone terribly wrong. Overcome the stink. If I don't have that on a bumper sticker,
it's compelling. Compelling.
Greg, what's with Democrats and presidents that just their health falls apart? I mean, you got FDR, now you got Biden.
I didn't see that. You just named two. Two out of a. See, I think you need a third one for a trend. Jimmy Carter passed away, so I'll help you there. But
150.
Yes, that's
true.
true.
Was old for a long time.
They're realizing that they need a Trump of their own, and they're right, because Trump took on the establishment, not just the Democrats. He took on everybody. They need that because they need somebody to take on their party. But they have to realize that it was their treatment of Trump specifically that got him to this juncture. Why did they tolerate, protect, and enable a decrepit president? Because they convinced themselves that Trump was Orange Hitler, and that anything was better than Orange Hitler. Leave nothing on the table. Everything was on the table, including lying, creating a cover-up, because, a corpse would be better. A corpse would be better than Trump. Scott Adams lays it out. I'm going to keep mentioning him every day. The Biden is fine hoax was dependent on the Trump is Hitler hoax, which was resting on the fine people hoax.
That's true.
And it was the fine people hoax, and this is the hilarious part, that Biden ran on in 2020. His own words. So how crazy is it that the lie that got him elected is now the lie that effectively destroyed the party? This is why I brought up the fine people hoax every day, because this is where it ends. They do need a rebrand. They may have to change their name. Philip Morris became Altria. That's a possibility. Bruce Jenner became Caitlyn. I don't know. This could happen. But they need a complete cleaning of the house. The one thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up, the corruption is so vast and so widespread, it might work to the Democrats' benefit. Because, where do you start?
I don't know where he started. I know where James Comer is going to start, apparently, Jillian. He's going to call in folks to be interviewed over what they knew, when they knew it. And he's positioning this as an investigation into potentially, I guess, defrauding the American people.
I was just going to say, he's going to do what he always does, which is open an investigation. And that is going to go forward. Everybody's going to kill me for saying this. But to play devil's advocate, right? I'm not saying there was not a
preach, Jillian.
I'm not saying there was not a cover-up, and I'm not saying that people should not be held responsible. I have never worked in politics, but having worked in Washington, D.C. for a very long time, I will tell you that this is the job of aides, whether they're working for a member of Congress. Greg's shaking his head in agreement with me.
No, I've said this. It's not that the White House is supposed to lie.
Correct.
It's the media. It's the media that's really it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so there's accusations against the media for covering up and the officials. In terms of the officials at the White House, they were hired by the Biden campaign and then the Biden White House to protect the president's interest. A big part of your job when you work in Washington, whether you work for a freshman member of Congress or the commander-in-chief, is to hide some of the more unsavory aspects about them, whatever those are, hide their weaknesses, and insist that there's nothing going.
Jill, she's just going. She's just walking. She's not even, she's like, yo, you're already the president. She doesn't even, she's just going. How is she so calm when her man is almost falling off his shoes? Out of shoes. Oh, God. Oh, Lord.
No problems. Everything is great. So I think you
look at her.
It's not that you don't then blame people for taking that way too far, but not everybody looks at it as this was something wrong. A lot of people look at it as like the staff at the staff level, they were just doing their jobs.
But the media didn't do their job.
Not the media, yeah.
So Jessica, like more of a 30,000-foot view here. If you wanted to draw something similar in a different way, you go back after George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, the Republican Party was not in a good place. So you had this Tea Party movement that came after it. It did pretty well, kind of fizzled out under Obama, and then from there you have what is now the MAGA movement that has taken over the Republican Party. The Democrat Party, is Joe Biden the George Bush for them, the one that's going to cause a major reset, that's going to create a groundswell of something different?
I don't think so. No, I still think that there are not that many policy variations that other Democrats would be putting forward. I mean, you have the progressive wing and you have the more centrist wing, but generally speaking, Democrats were pretty happy with the legislative achievements of the Biden White House, which is why it was so hard for so many people to say that they thought he wasn't doing a good job or that he couldn't continue on to run again. And so, no, I don't think it's like the Tea Party movement. And usually what happens when there is a challenge from the left is that they just lose to the centrist candidate. I mean, that's why we don't have Cori Bush anymore. That's why we don't have Jamal Bowman anymore. There aren't really parallels between the two. But I think what's going to happen, and
I'd say Ilhan Omar is way worse than Michelle Bachmann was. I mean, there's still plenty of them in there. I mean,
yeah, there are definitely far left progressives in there. But I'm just saying that. Anyway. What 2028 is going to be about is what happens over the course of the next 4 years. That's what happens. It's going to be a referendum on the Trump 2.0. If J.D. Vance is top of the ticket, it'll be easier to tie it directly to him. And right at this particular moment, Democrats aren't all that unhappy with what they're seeing. You know, Trump announcing a tariff war a day, for instance. This reconciliation bill, if it goes through and cuts hundreds of billions of dollars from Medicaid and Medicare to give tax breaks to the wealthy.
Not true, but okay.
It is 100% true.
You are spinning.
I'm not.
You are spinning so fast. I'm getting under my eyes.
I'm looking straight ahead. Ask Josh Hawley. And I would say,
hold on. Let me get him on the phone. Josh?
Tell him I loved his op-ed. And Greg mentioned a staggering level of corruption. And I just got a note that the staggering level of corruption from last night's meme coin dinner.
That's what you're focusing on, the meme coin.
No, 40% of Donald Trump's wealth has been accumulated since he became president because of 2 crypto coins.
40%?
The New York Times did interviews with foreign buyers of this cryptocurrency
here we go, ladies and
who
gentlemen.
came over here to have dinner with him. A guy from South Korea.
This is not even part of the segment.
So what?
You're talking about a meme coin.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about who's corrupt and who is profiting off the American office.
Did he try to cover that up? I don't think so.
Yeah, Caroline Leavitt said it was his
you're
personal
defending
capacity,
an administration
and then he's behind
that
the
covered
president.
up a dying leader, and you're sitting here going, but meme coin, meme coin.
I'm saying billions.
All right, let's
of
give Paul a
dollars.
chance to clean it up real quick. Paul, final
It is
thoughts.
clean on my side of the street.
All right, all
Real
I can
quick.
say is this. Right now, if the Democrats are really happy with all of their legislative initiatives and where they sit, then they were out to lunch 5 November, 20 January, and subsequent because they got shellacked. There's that.
There you go.
Okay, number 2, let me just focus on investigations real quick because Comer is going to constitute. I want this congressional investigation to be the backdrop of summer. Let that be, summer you got like baseballs on in the background, you're not really paying attention. These hearings should be something that's going on in the background. Here's why. Donald Trump, 34 quote-unquote felony convictions on that BS case brought here in New York City, based on the idea that it was election interference. Well, if paying Stormy Daniels is election interference to a beyond a reasonable doubt standard, then you're telling me hiding the fact that we had a president who was completely non-compos mentis. That's not election interference? I want to know who colluded on that. And you know what? There's no getting out of it if you're the media, and here's why. No. You can take it from the guy himself. He would come out at the press conferences, he'd look at the cards, and he'd say, okay, let me see who I'm going to call on here. So very clearly they were colluding. Get people under oath, get into the comms. It's always right? It's always the comms, as they say in Intel. Get into those communications. Find out who's talking to. Remember Donna Brazil gave you the questions to Hillary Clinton? Yeah. Find out if that kind of stuff went on. Find out who was involved. And you can, even if it doesn't have to be arrests, but put the sunlight on it because the entire media needs an enema.
So what Donald Trump said, he said, clean it up real good. All right, up next, the loser Chicago mayor with a 7% approval rating.
Yeah.
Is calling President Trump a monster.
Hey, it's Will. Yeah, I don't know why or what it was thinking when it said, well, Donald Trump is a monster. What are you talking about? But, liberals, they'll say anything just to prove a point. Just to prove a point, they would say absolutely anything, yo. Anything. All right, here we go.
At least 2 hours a day. How about 6 hours a day? I think that's more where my
President Trump is now threatening Apple with an industry-altering ultimatum: either build hundreds of millions of iPhones in the United States or pay tariffs of at least 25% on iPhones that are made overseas. The president says he's not stopping there, making clear that Apple's rivals and some of the biggest tech companies in the world have also been put on notice.
It would be more. It would be also Samsung and anybody that makes that product. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. So anybody that makes that product, and that'll start on, I guess, the end of June. It'll come out. I think we have that appropriately done by the end of June. So if they make that product. Now, again, when they build their plant here, there's no tariff. So they're going to be building plants here.
My source tonight is Patrick McGee, who is the author of Apple in China, the capture of the world's greatest company. And it's great to have you here tonight. I should note, when you're listening to that, Tim Cook actually met with President Trump at the White House this week. It clearly did not, stave off whatever he may have been hoping to do so. Is shifting iPhone production to the United States even possible at this point?
Well, it really isn't. But the pressure that Tim Cook is under is really that he might have to do some semblance of answering that question. So you might have some assembly here. But the bind that Trump is putting on Tim Cook is really extraordinary. Remember, Apple doesn't actually manufacture anything themselves. So it's not even a matter of Tim Cook answering Trump. He would have to convince Foxconn or Luxshare or any number of companies to actually set up a supply chain. And Trump's tweet is interesting that he doesn't just ask for assembly. He is at least savvy enough to understand that just moving assembly wouldn't be enough. That's not the jobs we'd want. We want the higher value added. We want the real de-risking from China. But if you're talking about building the depth and breadth of the supply chain in America, you're talking about hundreds of factories. This is the iPhone, after all. It's a really complex device with 1,000 parts inside.
So if you're an American and you're listening to that and you say, okay, well, why shouldn't it be all completely made in the United States? What would you say to that?
Well, how much more do you want to pay for your iPhone, for starters? But you have to remember that they build 230 million iPhones a year, and this is a really complex product that gets redesigned every year. So it's not like you set up a production line for a car and build the same thing for the next 6 or 7 years. The iPhone has new components, new battery, new cameras every single year. That makes automation really difficult. That makes the whole process really complex. And we just don't have like 18 different things. We don't have the density of the population. We don't have the flexibility of the population. We don't have, 3-kilometer square towns that have 500,000 people inside, which is the sort of thing that you get at Foxconn. I mean, the US is just not a competitor to so many different things. So like, I'm really in favor of friendshoring, right? Doing this in Mexico, doing this in India, because doing this in Pittsburgh is ludicrous.
So what does Tim Cook do next year? Do you think he comes out with some kind of announcement in order to essentially try to not let this happen?
Let's remember what he did last time, which is he really ran the clock out on Trump's presidency. So in 2017, I believe it was, Trump announced that Tim Cook had promised to build 3 big, beautiful factories in America. That never came to be. And I think it's going to be difficult for Tim Cook to sort of make the same claim, because Trump's sort of onto him now, that this is someone who talks out the side of his mouth and doesn't actually sort of fulfill the promise. And he's probably wise to the idea that the $500 billion commitment that Apple made in February it doesn't really meet the eye, as it were. I mean, that's a lot of money. And the press release saying that it'll build 20,000 jobs doesn't really make any sense. And if it was true, you would have dozens of factories already being put up right now. And some people, when I say that, they say, oh, well, it's only been a few months. No, because that's the second big announcement. In Trump 1.0, Apple announced a $430 billion investment in America. So if those were real numbers, really about reshoring American jobs, you would have seen so much more over the past decade, really, and you really have seen none of it.
Patrick McGee, thank you for joining tonight.
In a social media post this morning, President Trump demanded that Apple move their manufacturing operations to the U.S. and start making iPhones here. And if they refuse, he'll impose a 25% tariff on them. The president was asked about it today in the Oval Office and indicated that other phone manufacturers would also be subject to the tariffs.
It would be also Samsung and anybody that makes that product. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. So anybody that makes that product, and that'll start on, I guess, the end of June. When they build their plant here, there's no tariff. So they're going to be building plants here.
Well, the idea of Apple producing iPhones in the U.S. is not new. It has consistently been shot down by Apple. Steve Jobs, the late Apple founder and CEO, brought it up to President Obama in 2010, telling him that the U.S. simply didn't have the engineers to support a U.S.-based manufacturing operation, a position the current Apple CEO Tim Cook has echoed. Even if Apple began moving operations to the U.S. right now, industry experts say it would take 5 to 10 years to set up and would dramatically raise the price of an iPhone. Joining now with more on the story is senior data analyst Harry Enton. So how many Americans own iPhones?
You know, let me tell you, when I think of the iPhone, I think of my girlfriend. Why is that? Because every single time I look over to my left, she's on her frickin' iPhone, okay? And it turns out she's not alone, right? I like anecdata. What percentage of Americans are on their phone, their smartphone, at least 2 hours a day? What are we talking about here? We're talking about the vast majority. Look at that. 75% of Americans are on their smartphones at least 2 hours a day. How about 6 hours a day? I think that's more where my girlfriend is. 23%. We're talking about a quarter of Americans. This is reaching everybody. Now, of course, we're not just talking about crummy phones like the one that I have here. We're talking about iPhones.
Do you actually use this?
I actually use it. Here, you can play with it.
Do they make these anymore?
They do make those over. They still make them. Okay. I got it from, we'll just say I got it from an interesting place. Anyway, we're talking about iPhones, right? What number of Americans have iPhones at
That's what I asked you.
Yes, that is what you asked me. Yeah. If you look at this, look at the number of Americans who have iPhones at this point. Look at this. In 2004, before the iPhone was created, it was 0. Then it was 88 million in 2014. Look at the number that we have now. It's 155 million. It's not just that the majority of adults have an iPhone. It's that the number of Americans that has the iPhone continues to grow, and it's even more popular among teenagers than it is among adults at large.
And if it was manufactured in the U.S., how much would the price go up?
Yeah, okay. So that's, I think, the big question is, okay, let's bring this, and we're going to let's say we enter a magical universe where Donald Trump gets his way and the iPhone, in fact, would be produced in America. Right now, the iPhone basically cost about $1,000, right? So that is the exact price that my girlfriend paid. But let's say all of a sudden that the iPhone's going to be produced here. Well, there are estimates of how much that would cost. Look at this estimate. My goodness gracious, it would cost $3,500. That is nutter butter, Anderson. That is crazy. So the idea that these tariffs would make the phones actually be produced here, to be perfectly honest with you, it's fantasy island, because what would actually happen? Apple would probably either A, eat the tariff costs, or B, they would pass it on to the consumer, but it would not result in what I think Donald Trump actually wants, which is the iPhone being produced here. It would simply drive up costs for the American consumer. And you know, I'll ask you one final question. You think the American consumer likes the idea of prices going up?
Is that a hypothetical?
It's a hypothetical.
Yeah.
I'm asking a question.
All right.
The answer is no, of course not. So it would just drive his approval ratings down. This, to me, is one of the sillier ideas
What are
that
we
Donald
watching
Trump has had.
right here?
He's had many silly of them about 4 months in.
Harry Anton, thanks very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. We're joined now by tech journalist, CNN contributor Kara Swisher. She's the host of Pivot and On with Kara Swisher podcast. Thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I was on the phone with Harry's girlfriend.
Yes.
What the heck?
Yeah. She's going to be here. She's going to be here next. So what do you think it means for tech or for business in general?
Yeah.
The president isn't just targeting countries or industries like when he said he would, tariff firms made overseas, but he's now threatening individual companies.
Well, that's what he does. I mean, he used to do it by name before in the previous administration. Now he's doing it by company. He can't muscle companies into prices like yelling at Disney or yelling at Apple or whatever. They'll make what they want to make. These are massive global corporations that have business all over the world, and they're as big as some countries. Some of these entities. Apple will do what's right for Apple. There are some questions about how much money they invested in China. Largely Tim Cook, who did all those logistics. And that's a good question to ask. But the idea of bringing these companies back here is, I think he's thinking back in the 80s when they brought the cars here, the car manufacturers. And that could happen for some stuff, but the prices will go up considerably. And so that'll be a loser for a lot of these companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's not realistic for iPhones to be made completely here in the United States. I mean, maybe they would open some assembly lines or something here. I don't know if that would appease the president.
Well, you don't want people making the things that he wants us to make aren't things that the United States should make anymore. We should be having the advanced research stuff, the newer stuff, maybe some chips and things like that. But we should be leaning into the future, not leaning into the past. And I think these supply lines are all set where they are. And of course they can change, like going to Vietnam or India. That's where he also doesn't want them to happen. But they're certainly not going to come back here in the way he's living in a different era of manufacturing, and it's just not the way things are made anymore. And eventually, at some point you'll be printing iPhones in the future, but not today.
It also, I mean, this is why the attack against foreign students at American universities and Harvard right now could be at others seems so short-sighted, because if you want stuff being done in the United States, having the best and brightest from all around the world who want to come to the U.S. because we have superior education here and stay in the U.S. and work for companies that are here, I mean, this is the exact opposite of what, if Trump wants businesses here, you want the best and brightest from all over coming here.
Yeah, that makes no sense. Let me just list some of the executives who are important tech people. Satya Nadella of Microsoft, CEO, the head of Alphabet, Sundar Pichai. Elon Musk is from South Africa. You could go through. Sergey Brin, who started Google, is from Russia, came from Russia. There are so many incredible people working throughout the tech industry. This is I don't even understand what's happening here, because we have remained innovative due to our ability to bring immigrants into this country, and also people that were born here, and make them have entrepreneurial opportunities they didn't have at home. Now they'll be going back home and doing those things, or they'll be sent back home. The whole thing makes zero sense if we want innovation in the future in AI, in robotics, in advanced medical stuff. I mean, all the stuff that's going forward.
These guys keep saying it would take 5 years to 10 years to bring manufacturing back to the United States. Okay, if it's going to take 5 years to 10 years to bring manufacturing back, don't you think we should start right now?
We have to have a robust pipeline of talent from across the globe. Again, global companies. These are not American companies, they're global companies.
You know, Tim Cook went to the inauguration, obviously, as a lot of other of the tech folks did, hoping to develop a relationship, hoping that would have an impact. Just as we've seen with the president and these law firms, no amount of, it seems, acquiescence to an initial demand will ever satisfy the president. That it's always, you know, these law firms have made deals thinking, oh, we're going to only do pro bono work on things that, you know, we have mutual agreement on, like veterans causes. They can be tapped by this president to do just about anything.
Well, you know, Donald Trump has a limited time in office compared to these companies. These companies will be here later and they will form alliances as they need to, because they are city states in many ways. If you think about them, they're city countries in a lot of ways. And so they'll form alliances and they'll do what they need to do, but they are also watching to what's next and what they need to do. But they always do things in their self-interest. And Donald Trump can put a lot of pressure on them, and it could set us back in many ways, especially in AI or some other things that are coming. But it's not going to stop the march of capitalism, which is relentless and will not change, I think.
The assault on research to me is particularly troubling because, I mean, you know, it doesn't get a lot of publicity, but, you know, these are doctors, these are all sorts of people doing cutting edge research that takes years to set up, years to attract that kind of talent. To destroy it now, the ripple effects of it can last for decades.
Yeah, we don't know what didn't get invented. We didn't know the Google or some healthcare, the cancer research, the use of AI in cancer. There's so much exciting stuff happening right now in these areas of mixing technology and science and medicine and everything else. And the fact that you're shutting them down and making people feel insecure is the worst possible thing to do if we want to remain dominant in so many of these important industries as we move forward. And these are job creating industries too, in terms of, and creating, you know, a better humanity in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases. And so it just is so short-sighted. It's so astonishingly short-sighted and not what the way this country has excelled over the years in technology or any other innovation.
Yeah. Kara Swisher, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Trump waging war on the phone companies, threatening to slap a 25% tariff on all smartphones manufactured outside the U.S. after initially targeting only Apple for its overseas supply chain.
It would be also Samsung and anybody that makes that product. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. When they build their plant here, there's no tariff. So they're going to be building plants here.
Apple losing roughly $92 billion in value today on that news. Trump also saying he's not looking to make a trade deal with Europe after, of course, threatening a 50% tariff on all EU goods, set to go into effect in 9 days.
So I just got these notification on, well, actually, this was 8 hours ago, but I didn't check it out. I got this notification on YouTube Studio. It says here, known issue, views showing as 0 for recent uploads in Studio. But I don't know if this affects live stream. It says creators have received report that many of you are seeing recent uploads showing as having 0 views in YouTube Studio while the watch page is showing views currently. You may also be seeing impression and average view duration showing as 0 as well. Our team is looking into this and we'll follow up here as soon as we have more information. Thanks for your patience while we work on this and get it resolved. I don't know if this affects live stream, but hopefully they get it rectified. I thought it was me getting shadow banned, but according to YouTube, they're saying that recent uploads in studios isn't going really well, so they're gonna try to fix it. Hopefully this gets fixed. So, see Shelly, this might not be a shadow ban issue. Hopefully. Okay, that's why I said we're gonna do 3 more streams. We're gonna do 3 more streams. If we get the same result here, we're just gonna pause streaming for a while and just load up on shorts, load up on video on demand, which would be on the actual page. But for now, let's see what happens.
All of this sparking a major sell-off on Wall Street today. Outfront, no.
Shout out to Busky. Busky said, well, that's good. Yep.
Now you know them well, Peter Tuchman and Dan Ives. Nice to see you both in person tonight. So when we look at this, Dan, I know you've done the math here, right? So you've done the math on not only the cost of the iPhone, but the very real timeline of what it would mean if Apple was actually able to shift all of its production to the U.S. What are we looking at?
So, look, this is a fairy tale that ultimately Apple could bring iPhone production to the U.S. Because we've said if you actually produced iPhones in the U.S., it would ultimately take 4 to 5 years and probably $20 billion just to get 10% of the supply chain to come to the U.S. And what that means, $3,500 iPhone. And that speaks, and Tuchman and I have been talking about for weeks, is that the reality is that you could talk about this, but it's a fairy tale that you could actually get iPhone production to the U.S. India is where Apple went. That was a smart strategy. But now you're starting to see companies go around there because they know the reality. And the reality, you cannot produce this at scale in the U.S.
Right, so they're finding those workarounds. So in terms of the impact that we saw today on Wall Street, a 3% hit to Apple stock after this announcement. The market's all closing down today. Is that about a reaction to what happened with Apple and smartphones and the comments from the president today? Is it a reaction to this warning floating 50% tariffs? Or is it everything at once?
You know what? I think it's a bit of a flashback for everybody to what the trauma that we experienced back from February 19th down into the bowels of April, right? I mean, that was a what we called a economic vandalism, right? And it was almost, people really were traumatized by it. I know that the market's recovered, and that's wonderful, and I'm happy about that. We've been able to get back a lot of the loss from Independence Day. Independence Day, was that what it was called? Liberation Day. Sorry. And however, the market is still reeling off of that, and people's fears about feeling, that 401ks became 201ks, and it was that short period of time. And even though the numbers and the indices have regained some of their value, a lot of the stocks and a lot of the image and a lot of that, even like Ken Griffin said, that we've lost that, it's eroded that brand America by America concept. And so I think today, when we woke up this morning and it was this sort of swath that we're going after the EU, and and it's not like they came at it with, we've got a plan, we're going to address tariffs, the discrepancies with the US and Europe, let's talk about it. It was like, I'm doing this, and and that brought back
the way it
PTSD almost to it.
Well, but so what we'll hear, right, what you will often hear from the president and those around him, and we've heard from years, well, that's because that's part of his negotiating tactic. He's got to keep everybody on their toes. You can't know what's coming next. I'm just throwing it out there. But are we starting to reach a saturation point? Is it becoming the boy who cried wolf?
Well, look, I mean, and we've talked about the boy that cried wolf. But look, I think the bigger issue, it comes down to, if you're a company, you're Apple, you're a retail company, how are you planning in this environment?
You can't.
So now you're getting down, it's what we've been talking about. Now you're getting down to the reality. And for companies can't get bullied, because companies be like, okay, how do I go about for my business? What's the best thing? And that's why what Peter's talking about is that to just come out Friday and be like 25% tariff, 50% tariff in the EU. Look, that's part of the market reaction. You're starting to see it wear thin.
So if it's wearing thin, is the president and the United States, or you talk about the brand erosion, is he also, starting to lose patience, but also is he losing leverage at this point? I mean, what's left if there's this is constantly what you're getting?
Yeah, and that's a really hard thing to know. Who is in his court still? Who is not? How we had what's left us in a little bit of a paradox is that the market, even in the eyes of not a lot of deals, like we did have somewhat of a deal with China, but that was more like a one-off, right? I mean, think about it. Do we know anything really more than we did on Liberation Day? No, we don't. We don't know any particulars. And yet the market rallied. And so people are not really clear about that. I think it was, also the president told everybody to buy the market. So we know that. But I think everybody is confused, and I'm not sure. You know, what I've seen, I analyze the market on a day-to-day basis, right? Sort of the forensics. And what we've seen over the last 3 days was the market had nice intraday reversals. We opened down on Monday due to the Moody's downgrade, right? But we had a beautiful rally into the day. But each day, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, in the last 20 minutes of trading, we sold the market off hard. That to me meant that people have no confidence that tomorrow is not going to be what happened today. That we don't know what the next, we're one tweet away from crazy town.
And I think exactly like he's saying, you don't know what's coming ahead. And that's why
how do you position yourself in light
We're
of
stuck with
all
the
that?
one constant, right, which everybody can agree on at this point, and that's the uncertainty.
The
That's not going
uncertainty,
anywhere.
and market can't handle that at all.
Nice to see you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Trump today breathing fresh life into his trade war in multiple ways. First, by saying he would impose a tariff of at least 25% on Apple if it refuses to make iPhones in the United States. And it turns out it's not just Apple that's at risk. This afternoon, Trump followed up with more.
Do you have the power to tariff one single company? And why would you want to hurt an American company in that way?
It would be more. It would be also Samsung and anybody that makes that product. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair.
Now, of course, it's likely that a tariff of 25% could mean the costs get passed on to anyone who buys a new phone. Apple has long said it cannot manufacture phones in the United States, given the majority of skilled engineers are abroad, and they're cheaper to keep on the payroll. But also today, Trump said he would recommend a 50% tariff on goods imported from the European Union. Starting June 1st, markets, well, they reacted. The Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ all closing down. I want to go straight to business editor Richard Quest, business editor at large, Richard Quest. Richard, there's about 50 different ways I could take this. So I just want to start with, beyond the fact that why give anybody a quiet Friday? What's the mood right now when you talk to your sources in Europe, when you talk to market participants about this kind of ratcheting back up?
No one knows. No one knows what to believe because there's two distinct theories here of which you are very familiar. The first one is look at what he does, not what he says. And the second corollary to that, if you will, is that he always backs out. He always chickens out in the end and he ratchets down. The problem is it takes a brave person to proceed on the basis of just hoping that this time isn't the time the president follows through. When I listened to that news conference or that impromptu Q&A in the Oval Office, it was bewildering. It suggests he doesn't want to deal with Europe. He actually said, I don't want a deal. I want them to bring car manufacturing to the US. That's not going to happen. So I can't see how they get out of it. In terms of Samsung and Apple and all the others, again, they can't suddenly ratchet up. So what is the definition of success as seen by the president? My gut feeling tells me it's some sort of wishy-washy agreement that he can hang his hat and coat on and say, look what I've got, but actually doesn't really change the terms of trade much.
Yeah, it's obviously we're all trying to figure it out. We've seen elements of that, obviously, in the UK deal, the kind of walk back on the China peak fight that was going on. But this, to your point, those words in the press conference today, or impromptu press conference, they were oh, okay, we're going to do this. Richard Quest, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much. Let's go straight to CNN's Jeff Zeleny at the White House. Jeff, what Richard and I were just talking about, the idea, I don't want a deal, which he just said flat out in the Oval Office today. What are people saying behind the scenes at the White House?
Well, that certainly underscores the point that this is a threat. This is a way for President Trump to underscore the fact that he believes the EU has not been responding quickly enough. But the fact of the matter is, Phil, some people here at the White House, I talked to some advisors, were a little surprised this morning when the president sent this out on social media pretty early in the morning. And they've been following him all day, as opposed to him following some official schedule here. He sent that out. He's been agitated, quite frankly, and he has not been talking about trade and tariffs for almost 2 weeks now, so he clearly wanted to revive that. But when he was in the Oval Office today, when he was asked about these specifically, again, he raised the grievance, as he often does, about the EU.
I've been saying to everybody, they've treated us very badly over the years. It was formed in order to hurt the United States, in order to take advantage of the United States, and they've done that. And I just said it's time that we play the game the way I know how to play the game. You know, they've taken advantage of other people representing this country, and they're not going to do that any longer.
Oh, gee.
So this all comes as these trade negotiations have been underway. I mean, there's about a little over a month remaining before that July 8th deadline. Again, we should circle all of the deadlines on trade and tariffs in pencil because they are ever changing, Phil, as you well know. But the EU is not looking kindly on this. They say that they will be guided by mutual respect. So at the end of all this, the market obviously went down today because of this, and I'm not sure if this advanced the cause at all, but the president there is clearly wanting to call out the EU once again. So much for the 90 deals in 90 days, because these deals, as it turns out, are much more difficult to negotiate country by country.
It's leftovers. Right, read the.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning into the live show. Yes. Mr. Busky says, yeah, I always choose this format because I don't like the other with the chat. Makes the screen super small. Yes, Mr. Busky. Some people say they actually watch the show on TV. So, like while we're live streaming, some say they watch it on their TV. So that's why I decided to do both ways, horizontal and vertical. And so far, we were seeing, great results until whatever happened 2 days ago, yesterday. I don't know. But instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. And believe in Almighty God. Like I always say, fathers, take care of your kids. Shout out to the veterans. Shout out to the military personnel. You guys protect the homeland. Also, shout out to the police. Thank you for your duty that you do to the American people, or for the American people. Yeah, shout out to the moderator, C. Shelley. Shout out to Mr. Busky and everybody on the other stream. Shout out to MTB. Shout out to Marlo World. Shout out to J Boogie, Terry Porter. Everybody watching, God bless you guys. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to double tap your screen. Okay. And yes, we will be back tomorrow. We're gonna try this again tomorrow and see what happens. Hopefully, whatever is going on would be resolved, hopefully. But yes, thank you for tuning in. God bless you. See you soon. All right. God bless you. God bless America. It's your boy Genesis, and I am signing out.